Jeśli chcesz być na bieżąco z naszymi webinarami, w ustawieniach obserwowania naszego fanpage'a zaznacz opcję Wyświetlaj najpierw. Możecie inwestować w nasz projekt za pomocą portalu patronite.pl. Wyszukajcie Wojciech Gawlik. Dzięki. Możesz zostać sponsorem naszego projektu. Mamy różne pakiety. Zapraszamy do kontaktu. Zapraszamy Was na forum Nowej Edukacji. Już za chwilę ruszamy. Zapraszamy do udostępnienia tego posta. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Wojtek, okay. And I can see Michał and Mike already here. We are going to talk about. We are going to talk in English, of course, about empowering possibilities and searching for competences. Mike is here from Ireland. Hello, Mike.
Hi, how are you doing? Good to see you.
Mike runs a nice application that is called Allison. Could you tell us something about you and this application that you are running, this website?
So maybe you might help me here in terms of the typical audience that's listening in today. What is their particular interest?
Well, we've got people who has desire to change of education. So there are teachers, there are parents, so who are looking for some new things, and who are looking to develop their competences and looking for something new, interesting.
Okay, so let me just give you a brief on Allison. So Allison is actually 13 years old. We're the first MOOC-like platform globally. If you're familiar with the term MOOC, it's just massive open online courseware. So we have about 2,000 free courses. We've got 16 million people signed up on the platform and nearly 3 million graduates. So we're based in the west of Ireland, but we are very global, and we have people from, I think, nearly 20 countries working with Allison now. So we're focused, if you want to figure out what type of content you can find on Allison, it's mostly bottom of the pyramid in the sense that it's a lot of people that are maybe working class or doing jobs that are more manual rather than necessarily professional, and a lot of developing world people. So we are very strong in across the United States with people who are in manufacturing, that type of thing, and also who might be trade union members, that type of organization, and then across the developing world, just a lot of developing people and our developing country participants. So of the 16 million, we'd have about maybe 3 million in the US, about 2 million in the UK, and maybe 2 million plus in India, but around 2.5 to 3 million across Africa, very strong in Africa. As for Poland, I think we have something like 70 to 80,000 registered learners, but we only provide in English, so you really need to speak English to use the platform. We have several Polish employees, but that's not unusual in Ireland or the UK. But in any case, that's a little bit of background. All of the content is self-paced, and there are two essential educational components on qualifications, should I say, on Allison. There's a certificate that you should be able to complete in 1.5 hours to 2.5 hours. And then there's a diploma that takes between 9 and 11 hours to complete. And we have 9 different categories, but it goes from anything from touch typing to project management to speaking English to accountancy. So it's all practical workplace type of learning. But we're changing quite a bit and in what we've done. And I was going to, if I may, just show 3 slides and just summarizing the vision of where we're going, if that's okay, if I can share the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me see.
So in the meantime, I will ask Michał to tell something about him, and then we are going back to slides. Okay.
Okay.
Michał, can you tell us something about you? I know that we have met many times, but still, it's it. You have to unmute yourself. Wait a minute. Okay. Go on.
We have created the Storyteller Museum, the place devoted to collect and gather oral tradition from different places, but also to confront people with different wisdom from different cultures. And throughout storytelling, I try to attract children and people to educate themselves to different fields.
Okay. So, Mike, I will show your presentation. So here it comes.
Yes. So can you let me see now?
You have
yeah. Can you see that screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
You have turned it off.
Okay. Can you see all knowledge? Is the beginning of it?
No, you haven't shared screen yet.
Oh, haven't? Okay. Let me try and fix that.
Okay. Okay, so here we go.
Can you see my screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's just 3 slides here, but this is basically the vision of Allison. So Allison is entirely free, and we're the only truly free learning platform that I'm aware of that provides assessment and is focused on the workplace. And if you know of any, let me know. That is free. There's lots of platforms out there that says they're free, but then they try and charge you in some way. An important distinction about Allison is we're a social enterprise. We are set up as a business, but our aims is social. What we're trying to do is to drive the cost of education to 0 across the world for every type of education. So the first slide here is just to say that we have, as a global society, the technology today to make all knowledge and skills training available for free. And we can do that by creating a platform like Allison, which has the capability of distributing access to 2,000, 10,000 courses, 1 million courses, it doesn't matter. It just is a platform that's set up to do that. And it can do so profitably, scalably, and sustainably. We support our provision we have advertising on the website, and we have the option that you can purchase a parchment when you're completed a course. And because we have millions of people on the platform every day, the income from that more than pays our bills. But the point of this slide is to say that we have the potential today to learn anything and to be tested on anything, anywhere, anytime, at any level. And the other thing is that we have the opportunity to teach. So on Allison, you can readily see that we have free learning and you can go and study a course. But what you don't see, but those that are familiar with the platform will know this, is that you can click through to a publishing universe where you can get free access to our publishing tool and you can create a course online. And the only thing that we insist is that you complete 2 courses to make sure that we know that you are trained on using the tool. But what this enables is that you can have all of the knowledge of the world coming into the platform and going out on the other side. And yet there is a method of paying the bill for paying the expenses of making this all happen. So again, it's the knowledge, all knowledge and skills can be freely put online. And because we give a royalty to any of the publishers, so if you have a course on Allison and it's successful and people like to study it, that means people are clicking an ad when they go onto that course, and you get a percentage of that. And also, if somebody buys a certificate for your course, you get a percentage of that. And this encourages all sorts of publishers around the world and anyone who knows anything to publish. So anyway, I'll leave it there on that slide. It's just, look, we have the means and the technology to make all knowledge and skills transfer available for free. The second thing I just want to talk about is self-knowledge. If you go onto the Allison site, you can do a free personality test. So a lot of people, and let me explain the context of this. A lot of people start studying because they want to become more employable. But before they start doing a course, the first thing that they need to say is, who am I? And what are the skills that I have that are natural to me? What am I good at? What am I naturally strong at? And what am I naturally weak at? And what type of job and what type of a career would suit me best? It's very important, we believe, that everyone tries to assess themselves before they start engaging in any particular type of learning or any type of career. So on Allison, we've provided a free workplace assessment that allows you to examine your own personality. And we are following that with cognitive skills tests. And cognitive skills tests basically tells you how good are you at verbal reasoning, how good are you at numeracy, working with numbers, and then your abstract reasoning. Can you see things that are disparate, that are separate, and pull them together and see some logic? These are really important skills for the workplace. But the problem is that they've been very expensive all around the world, that they cost $100 to do one of these tests. On Allison, you can do them for free, and you can really find out more about yourself. And that leads down to the third slide, because I don't want to spend too much time on these slides, is that what we do then is we know what you're learning, we know what you're interested in, we know what your strengths are, and then what we do is we connect that to the workplace. We say to the world, okay, these are the jobs that are out there. And then because we have a very large database, we can go into it and say, well, these people are best suited for taking that job. So at a big level, what we're trying to do is to essentially map the work skills of the world. There is no reason why you can't have 8 billion people, or adults, say 6 billion people on the platform, so that we really know, who has the skill of the world and what are the jobs that need doing. And if we can create a platform like this that allows free knowledge, free learning, free publishing, free psychometrics in sense of self-assessment, and then we can offer free recruitment so that we can connect the opportunities with capacity, then actually we're doing something really interesting and something really visionary. And as we do this, we employ, as I'm saying on the slide here, AI, artificial intelligence, in a big way that helps us figure out how these things connect. And it's all very, very possible. So I'll leave it there just for the moment. But that's essentially what we're up to.
Okay, thank you. So that means that for the time being, the competences are at our reach very easily, right? You can say that you can have all the competences from the world for free, right?
Yes. Yeah. What the education system today was the best that we've had to date, but really it's not good value today. People are still going to colleges and universities, and they might, for a lot of what they learn, they could stay at home and learn it for free online. We have to understand that universities today are more social institutions, and whereby people are learning to grow up at university. But we might be able to put them in a more interesting place than just at a college or a university, which is very expensive. And particularly in countries like the United States, where getting a good education can actually set you back for 20 years. You may not pay the debt for 20 years. And this is too burden. There's too much burden in this. And but technology can resolve that. Now, I'm not saying that online platforms are the answer to everything. Clearly, universities where you're doing chemistry, you need to go into the lab and you need to do an experiment, or sometimes you need to talk to that professor. But the fact is that those occasions are actually rare enough that a lot of the learning can be done online and for free.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean that. Okay, Michał wanted to ask something, but you have to unmute yourself. Michał, you are muted.
You open the possibilities for many people all over the world who cannot never access to education. I think it's a very brilliant and revolutionary approach to all system of education.
Yeah. Well, I think that the interesting thing about our type of a business or organization is the fact that maximizing profit and stakeholder value is not what we're about. We want to make a very good financial return, and we do have investors, and we respect the responsibility that we have to give them a good return on their investment. But we do it in a particular way. We don't compromise on the fact that we can find a way to both increase the social impact and at the same time keep the investors happy. And what's happening more and more in the world is that behind investors are shareholders and people who have pensions, and they're the people who own this money at the end of the day. And a lot of investors are looking for strategic impact for their money. They don't want to invest in tobacco. They don't want to invest in big pharmaceutical companies. They want to invest in companies that can change the quality of life in the world. And the one thing I should add is we're speaking here in English, but our platform is heading to a time when you will have an entirely Polish version of Allison, and that any teacher or any subject matter expert in Poland will be able to go on and learn how to use our publishing tool in Polish, use it in Polish, teach a Polish audience, and it'll be entirely free. And the main thing of doing this is that, it's the thing about technology. Once we write a platform and we have it set up, the marginal cost of of sharing its benefit to an next person is very low. It's next to zero because it's digital. And the other unusual thing about education versus, you talk about storytelling, Nico, and sometimes storytelling is in some ways slightly entertainment. You know, sometimes it's entertainment, sometimes it's educational. But education is very different from entertainment. Entertainment almost has to have, is a bit art. It has to have a shock value. It has to have something new. None of us want to watch the movie we watched last night again tonight because the shock value of it is gone. The newness is gone. But education is very different. Education is static. It can, and because if you look at all of the colleges and universities around the world, they're teaching the same thing, and yet they're charging vastly different amounts of money. But actually, so much of it can be digitized, put on a platform, provided for free, and then the universities and colleges need to look at themselves and say, where are we really adding value? And that's a difficult question for them to add. In fact, I was only saying today, earlier on in a conversation, that in Ireland, which is where I live, but Allison is a very international business, but it's where I live. The colleges, if you look at the balance sheets, if you look at the turnover that they do, the turnover for accommodation, you know, bringing students to live on campus is higher than what they charge in fees, right? So then you have to turn back and ask them, what business are you in? Are you in accommodation or are you in learning? And then when you look at the accommodation, particularly for a country like Ireland, a lot of international students come here. And they come here not just to learn. They want to learn English, and they want a new cultural experience. It's a social thing. So then the college has to turn around and say to itself, are we in accommodation? Are we in tourism? Or are we in learning? And the fact is, they're not so much in education. So.
Okay, let me get it into another layer, because you've mentioned that culture and education is something different, but I think that it's pretty the same, because in education you also need to be inspired to learn deeply. You need to be inspired, you need to have fun, you need to have emotions. But you also mentioned one really good thing, that many of us teachers do the same things year by year, day by day. Are you familiar with a book of Thomas Friedman, World is Flat?
Yes.
So he mentioned something like a phrase called untouchables.
Okay. Remind me.
So he meant that there are some people who we can call untouchable, and those people do things that can't be simply substituted by computers. So in terms of education, because you are pretty good engineer, right? And you have created, let's say, or maybe you are a visionary who created an app that substitutes people with technology. But
only to a certain extent.
Yeah. But you've also mentioned one good thing, that chemistry or other things, like you need to have a contact with a teacher.
Yeah.
So could you imagine things that cannot be done with a website, with a web application, with a web program?
Oh yeah. So for instance, the teaching of empathy. All right, any of us who have children, one of the most important things we need to give is empathy, so they care about how they impact other people. It's essential that all of our children have a good sense of empathy. You won't get that from a laptop. And I am fearful of ever introducing too much technology to younger age education. Younger children, I'd keep computers well away from them. In fact, I'm happy that we really only deal with young adults, say 16 to 17, 18 and up. And You know, I don't believe that the best way of teaching children younger than 16 is through a computer. It must be about the sharing values of the fact that we live together and that it's a common universe and all of those things. So I'm acutely aware of the limitations of technology. And so let's not over-egg it. But I would say to you, in response to your comment, I think that a lot of the time that's spent learning facts and concepts can be taught quicker through methods of technology. And as representing part of that revolution, my gift to you is giving you time, because I'm teaching your students a lot quicker to learn stuff. But then the responsibility is over to you, because you're, as a teacher, now you have more time. What are you going to do with that time? Because many teachers say, oh, you know, I'm so busy, I have to teach this person. But what if the kids come and they've actually learned an awful lot of what you would traditionally teach them? Now they come to you, and instead of being at the bottom of the ladder, they are on step 2. They are on step 3. So my challenge to the teachers of the world is, okay, we have now helped to bring your children on a little bit more. Now you have more time. You have more resource to work with. What are you going to do with it? So this is the challenge to the teachers of this world, is it can be an excuse to say that you know, I don't have time. But what if you did have time? How much better are you going to teach our children if you have more time to teach them with? So this is the challenge. A lot of teachers don't want that challenge. They say, you know, I'm fine. Send them to me at 9 o'clock, get them out here at 3 o'clock, and I want to go home and I want to get on with the rest of my life. So now, having said that, I don't
want to change.
Yeah, can I just say one comment? I just don't want any teacher to take me. I think teaching is a vocation. It's a very honorable one. And the vast majority of teachers want to give their students everything that they can give them in the time that they have. So,
yeah. Well, I was asking because due to the coronavirus, everybody thinks about some kind of hybrid education, because we need some time for children to learn some skills. And as you said, you can do it pretty good and faster in some ways than in regular school. But I was thinking, what should be the core of education in schools, because it will be more limited, because the time for children spent at school, if you don't have facilities in your school, right? It's impossible to put into one building 1,000 people and go share viruses and everything. So you have to make some groups of them. We are thinking about some kind of corona bubbles. So you don't spend all the time at school. But you've already said that going through web applications can be more effective in some ways, but there are empathy, team building, some kind of leadership skills that are not so easily done by application. Every interpersonal competences are somehow taught by experiencing in real life situations, right?
Yeah, well, we have to reimagine schools. The idea that we have 30 students in a classroom with a teacher is very, we call in this world, part of the world, Victorian. You know, it's a very old way of doing things. And we have to reimagine it in the sense that, yes, we can't have as many people moving around with each other. We don't want to have it so limited that young people are not interacting, because it's absolutely essential that they do, but maybe in smaller groups. Some of the biggest influences on our education system have nothing to do with education. The fact is, we have really encouraged women to go into the workforce. which is no bad thing. And I'm not saying that that's a bad, but what's happening then is that it's almost all the more important that children are not at home during the day, because both parents are out working, and the mother is not at home, or the partner is not at home to mind them. So unfortunately, it is in some instances a big babysitting institution, and we all know this. But I use babysitting because I can't think of another word right now. The challenge is the fact that look, nobody's to blame here. This is the way we have developed society: is that people work, children go to school, we meet all back, and we have dinner in the evening or whatever, wherever we work. We have to start thinking that actually everyone arriving in the same building at the same time just doesn't work as well as it used to. And this the convenience of putting hundreds of kids into the same building every day, is that really the smartest way to develop them? I'm not so sure. And let me say, I'm giving an opinion here as someone who is tangential to high schools, to education. It's not my business. Online is mostly workplace, but I am the father of 4 children. And I'm speaking, I guess, with a view to being both a parent and knowing something about the technologies and this. But let me not be talking all the time. Michaela, I'd be interested to hear more from you on what we're talking about.
Yeah, Michał, because you have to unmute yourself. So what competences do you think could be?
So you mentioned about empathy. I think we can share empathy throughout network as well, and I think we can open our eyes through empathy. And you work with maybe older people. I mean, older from 16 to more. With young children, and now I prepare projects to connect children from all over the world. And I think it's kind of revolutionary in the way that very often children, they don't interact from different countries together. And my focus now is to create storytelling projects which connects children from all over the world.
Yeah.
And for instance, create a classroom where they can children from different countries can participate in the same classroom. You mentioned about chemistry or biology, nature. We can create this online lab, which I can, for instance, I'm preparing now this online lab, storytelling lab, to make, for instance, transmission from the center of the forest and make it like webinar from the center of the forest.
Yeah.
I think we can create many projects which connect children and young generation. But of course, I also develop some methods that children cannot stay too much in front of the computer. They have to go out of the computer and then do some work. And then they can share experiences throughout the network.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that in education, it's something about, let's say, getting some knowledge. And if somebody has a motivation to get this knowledge, you can easily find it somewhere. There are other things that is using this knowledge or these skills in real life situations, and talking about this knowledge to other people, or talking about the experience that somebody came through, or sharing experience with others. So I think that it's this thing in education, and in schools we have to focus more on those 2 other aspects. But there are many things like Allison, that you can get pretty good knowledge and have it out from your mind. So you are not so focused. Oh my God. I won't finish before the end of this semester, and I have to do this. No, you have to provide. I think that the possibilities like Allison or other applications are also some kind of game changer in education, because for the time being, education is very focused on diplomas. it's not very skill based. It's more like paper based.
Yeah. And can I say to you on that, I often say, and if there's people who have heard me before, they will know that I say this very often, is only 7% of the world's population has ever been to college, right? It is an amazing statistic. 93% of the world have never gone to college. So you often hear in certainly the more developed countries that we have a great skills shortage. Well, why wouldn't we if we only use 7% of the world's talent? So the challenge is, how do we engage with all of those other people in the 93% who have the capability of being part of the modern workforce? And of course, there are many people in our countries that are working today, but the majority of people that are getting the better jobs are the people with formal education. Psychometrics can really change that. We cannot wait for people to go through 6 and 7 years of college education, but we can give them a test immediately today and see how smart they are. You know, we can test all sorts of things. I mentioned verbal reasoning, numeracy, abstract reasoning, how creative they are, what sort of team players are they, how do they motivate? You know, these things that we know. There are many companies in America, from Disney to Goldman Sachs to very famous global companies, that are not accepting formal education as a way to filter who they hire anymore. They're just saying, you know, so many people have access to education. Everyone's coming in with a master's degree. The number of people who are coming in with PhDs has rocketed. The number of people that are coming in with first-class degrees is crazy, because grade inflation has just got to stupid levels. So how do we really recognize? Well, I say that if we can actually give tests to people and find out how smart they are, then the person who is in Kenya, who is just a really smart guy or woman, you know, can actually do those tests, and their capability can stand up like an icon across the world to say, hey, there's someone over there, and look how they can perform. And then we approach those people, and we give them the education that they need for the opportunity that's there. And then we don't have to wait these 6 to 7 years. So the thing is, what we're all dealing with is politics, behavior, and the technology. The technology is there. We have to change people's behavior so that they accept that these possibilities are there. We need to encourage employers to not always be looking at formal education, because that is a bias towards people who are economically better off. But that does not mean that they're the smartest people, not by a long chalk. So we need to stop being, we need to be more open-minded. And then politics. Let's understand and be open and honest about the politics that is here. The education industry around the world is phenomenally fragmented. It's broken up. Why? Because of politics. Every country wants to control its own education system, because education is power. If you control the minds of people, it is very powerful. So it has stayed very political. But look at the age that we're living in. Now, like for instance, it said, we have 400,000 learners in Nigeria. I do not need the permission of the Nigerian government to educate these 400,000 people, because we have a one-to-one relationship with them. And this is really changing things. The challenge for governments is that, say in Ireland right now, the Irish government spends about €1 billion on skills training every year. But actually, of that €1 billion, almost 800 million goes into employing people. So what's it going to say? Oh, there's a better solution here online, and it doesn't cost anything. What does it do to the thousands of people that are educated in the old system? So here we have an issue that's affecting education that has nothing to do with education. It's the fact that these people are employed in a traditional way. We don't want to make them unemployed. So governments have a real issue of trying to migrate from one technologically enabled system to another. So it's not just about education, and it's not just about ideas, and it's not just about presenting solutions to people. There are greater issues here of politics, and then very few presidents of universities want to give up their $250,000 a year salary and change the system and say that, oh, we shouldn't be charging these people money because we're not giving them value. They'll keep charging them until we stop paying them. You know, that's where it's at. So anyway, let me stay there.
You've mentioned about Kenya, about people who can develop. Well, I will also go back to World is Flat by Thomas Friedman, because for me it's a very mind-changing book. Thomas Friedman has mentioned that world became very, very flat, and for the time being, if somebody from Kenya has a capabilities, has knowledge to do some things, he can easily be employed by people from Silicon Valley, from Ireland, from any place in the world. And now, if everybody is online, is working from their home, so coronavirus flattened the world really, 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 really fast, because localization is not an issue. What do you think?
I'll say one thing to you, and I'll go back to a comment that you made yourself earlier on, is the importance of culture. So there are particular parts. So we have offices in Nigeria, South Africa, and in Kenya now. And there are certain other parts of the world where I have tried to create publishing nodes where we would have 8 or 9 people working on publishing, and they would be in a group, okay? But culture is an issue, because work ethic is really important. Right across the world, Polish people get on very well in Ireland. They're hardworking. They come and they do a lot of good stuff. They come and they're skilled. You know, there is a work ethic that certainly the immigrants from Poland come to Ireland that they're well known for. Not every population of the world has a good work ethic like that. Irish certainly have a good work ethic, but it's not commonplace. And it's not right to say that it's commonplace. There are lots of places in the world where, so we can't, the world may be flat in terms of opportunity, but it's like, I often think about Andrew Carnegie, you know, when he was very wealthy 100 years ago, and he created all of these libraries, and everyone said to him about, oh, look at the opportunity that you're creating and all of the flourishing communities you're going to have. And he always said that the libraries are no good if people don't go into them. And this is the challenge. So online might bring the opportunity to people, but like the proverbial horse, you can bring the horse to water, but you may not be able to get the horse to drink. So culture is important, and that don't ask me the solution of that. I'm trying to fix it.
Okay, Michał, what do you think? Would you like to add something to this? I think that motivation is somehow a good word, that it's even not culture, but motivation. Michał?
Hello? I couldn't hear you for the connection. Could you repeat that question?
Would you like to add something to this that we have already talked about, or I was
yes. I'm really fascinated, by Mike and your way of creating new mindset for thinking about the world. This mindset is for politicians, for everybody.
Yeah, you know, one.
And I'm very inspired by your way of thinking and designing the educational system. It's amazing what you're creating.
Well, thank you. But we have a long way to go. But one thing I think about is education, and probably the reason that both of you are involved is that it fundamentally underpins all social progress. Education, whether how we deal with climate change, how we deal with political unrest, it's all about education, about bringing people to understand, you know. And one of my favorite sayings in life is that if you understand all, you forgive all. You know, if you understand where people are coming from. And one thing that's missing in the leadership of the world is that we don't look at society as a whole. We have few organizations like the United Nations, which has its sectoral interests, but we have to step up and say, how do we create a solution for the world, not just for our own communities? And it isn't that the case that we're going to resolve all of the problems of the world. I think that we can profoundly improve education across the world, but we're going to have bigger problems. We see climate change coming down our way. I believe that physical poverty in the world should be eliminated. We are smart enough, and we have the technology to get away from that. And the last point I'll make is, in any time there's war, what you really have to do to war, if you want people fight, you have to get one people to dislike another one intensely. But actually, it goes back to what you were saying, Mikhail, of bringing young children of different cultures and getting them to talk to each other. The young Jewish kid should be talking to the young kid who's a Palestinian, or he should be talking to, if we disagree with the politics of Middle America, let's connect a young Polish child with a kid in Alabama. Get them talking. If the world gets talking, and if the world gets learning together, they won't be able to fight each other. They will have no will. They will know that everyone is interconnected. One thing about a very global business like us is we deal with people in countries that are often said to be pariahs from the Western view, like Iran or Russia or whatever. And we deal with people from these countries every day, and they are wonderfully smart, normal people that just want to be left alone and to raise their children and have a good level of life. That's the case in every country of the world, except we have this thing called politics that gets in the way. Technology and education, and using the digitization of education, can really talk about leveling the world. We have a tremendous tool. And of course, Nelson Mandela had that lovely phrase of, it's the greatest tool that we have to revolutionize the world, but it is. And it starts where you're working, Miguel, on getting children to communicate and learn together and telling the stories, because stories are magical. That's what people get in the head. They remember the story a lot easier than the fact.
Absolutely. But one thing I not agree with what Wojtek said, that it's flat. I don't think we are experiencing not flat dimension, but what you're doing, Mike, is, and we have to imagine what does it look like. But for me, it's not flat. It's really interconnected, and it's not three-dimensional, even if it's another dimension of education. And well, I think this is the direction the education should go, and improve. Because you said you're mainly focused on this older population. It's like from 16 or 15. I think with
Michał, we can't hear you.
Also give another dimension.
We can't hear you. Something happens to your a bit better, but yes, but there is something wrong with your internet connection. So I think that we have to think about the education as some kind of hybrid or connection between good stories from Michał, good knowledge base where people can go search, but we need to think about education as a society that is together, society that learns together, and society that has issues, even cross-cultural, as Michał mentioned, society where people get to know each other, and they do have a need for some specific knowledge that they could find anywhere in the internet, right? My son's additional online lesson was a boy from US. So if it's a good to get to know people, because right now we are living in the world of stereotypes.
Yeah.
And it's pretty scary and bad for us, because stereotypes tends to destroy the communication between us.
There is truth in speaking to people. You know, people have an idea of a political point of view, but when you meet somebody of an opposite political view and you spend any time with them, you realize that often your position is not that different, and that the actual difference is just in one small area. And of course, we live in a world where, unfortunately, there are people who make money on the differences that are between us. Media in particular. Media makes money when there are stories about our security or our health, or these are the things that we immediately psychologically respond to. So everything is a crisis, everything is news, everything is one story against the other. It's trying to, media is trying to cause crisis because it wants our attention. But actually, the truth is, most of the world gets on every day just fine. And we have to build a society whereby we can compartmentalize the media and not allow it to be in a situation where it can be crying wolf every second minute of the day, so that we turn around to see the wolf. It's a real problem, and it's a real problem in every country. And of course, what we can do about it is to become more digitally and media literate. So we understand the media, that we understand that when somebody is telling a story, they're often telling it from their own perspective, for their own interests, and we have to see behind it and say, all right, well, where are they coming from on this? And then hopefully we can get back to the situation where we realize that there are some people in the media that are concerned about truth, that really research what they do and what they state, and that they should be believed. I have had many interviews for papers all around the world, but when I read the New York Times, I will read it and I will believe a lot of it, because I've had articles there and I know how well they research their articles. The BBC is another one that researches their articles well. I have had other newspapers where I can almost write the article myself, So it's just, again, media is a big issue, and education is very important here. A lot of the political situation in the world is that people have learned things that are not true, and they have to be unlearned. How do we deal with this? How do we teach young children to understand that the stories that they hear are not always true, and that they must decide between who's telling right or wrong? It's a tough one, because people will shout at you, well, what's right and what's wrong? Well, there is right in the world and there is wrong. Some of it is grey.
Yeah, and if you will find some kind of solution to that issue, that will give an important information to media to change this type of communication, because people found out that it doesn't work anymore.
Well, Allison survives on advertising, but the thing is that advertising is essentially trying to distract you. We might be showing a course on something, and then we have an ad that's distracting you because it's of commercial value to somebody who's paying us to distract you on something else. Ideally, organizations like ourselves will not be using advertising in the future. However, it is really useful today because it is the one way to give you value without you paying me cash, right? So it has allowed our television and our radio to be provided. So advertising is not essentially a bad thing. But what we need to do is that, the likes of, can we create communications around the world where our what we hear is not influenced by people who are paying to get in on the conversation? We have many things to sort out. Technology, we're forming all sorts of technology, but the thinking behind the technology and its impact, look how slow that we have been to understand the dangers of Facebook. It is a toxic platform in so many ways, and yet it has obviously good benefits as well. But Anyway, I know we're digressing a little bit from education, but the funny thing is that education underpins all of these issues that we have in society, and I guess that's why we are interested, and that's why people listen in on these things.
Well, I don't think that we go far away from education, because it's education. It's still education, because it's the education of the future that we need to develop. I think that it's also Michał has a very big issue with internet, so he's out all the time. I think that what is an issue is our social responsibility, or our social intelligence, because if you don't need much from people to run this business, right? So it's not very. If we all would spend, for example, $1 a year for applications like Allison, it would be free for whole universe.
Oh yeah. Yes.
Instead, we're thinking, okay, it's free. We don't need to pay. Okay, there are commercials, and still it takes our attention from the core that we need to be in. So yes. from education. So it's like thinking about our social intelligence. That is something wrong with it. It's the same as with our webinars. We have broadcasted since the beginning of pandemic 122 webinars, and from those webinars, we have acquired from Patronite websites $500 for 4 months of talking. Instead, people prefer to give, let's say, 100 zloty for being at conference, where they have access, for example, for 2 days of workshops. So still, they have less knowledge from the conference than from this. So it's something there. There is an issue of our.
Can I tell you one of the things that's working here is the fact that when knowledge is shared, the value of it decreases. So this is the thing, all knowledge is heading towards zero. The only knowledge that will retain value is stuff that's new, that we create, or stuff that is shared very closely. But this is why education will be free online. All education. It's extremely easy to commoditize it and to make it available to everyone. So then your question for your people going to their conference rather than going to you to listen to your videos or your webinars.
No, they listen to it. They listen to it, they participate, but they prefer to pay for something if they have to pay.
Yeah. So what are they paying for when they go to the conference, though? They're paying for social interaction with people.
No, it's a web conference.
Oh, it's a webinar. Oh, sorry, I got you. Okay.
No, it's like the webinars like here, but if somebody has to pay, he pays.
Yeah.
If he doesn't have to pay, he doesn't pay. So it's something like this.
Yeah. Well, we have noticed a huge difference. If we charge even the smallest amount of money, even 10 cent, or I don't know what it is in zlotys, but just the smallest amount of money, it changes immediately the behavior of whether people will click or not. It's just, do I go over the fence? Do I go over the hill to pay rather than free? And free is better in terms of drawing people in for sure. And then you give people the choice as to whether they want to upgrade the level of service they have. Most individuals are pretty happy with what they get individually. It's when we start learning in groups. So in a school in Poland can use an Allison group, so the teacher can see the results of all of the students that do a course on Allison. This is that can be free, or if they want lots of extra services, they can they can pay. But our goal is to try to get people to learn. So we just charge people kind of a nominal fee. The beauty of how we work is that we have millions of people on the platform, and that allows us to just charge to get only a small amount of income from everybody. And then it's different, you know. The thing through advertising, you know, one person clicking an ad in California can pay for 200 people in Africa, and it's remarkable. There's something nicely equitable about that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We have 1 hour left, and you said that you wanted to. Michał said that you have an hour or so.
Yeah. So we're pretty much up now. I need to go.
Yeah. So could we summarize a bit our discussion? What is there that you would like to tell in the end of our conversation? What's happened today, and then new thoughts that came into your mind, or anything that you would like to underline?
Michael, do you want to go first? No.
Mike.
Sorry, you want me to talk? Okay. I just want to leave people with sharing the vision that we have the technology and the capability to make access to all education and skills training free online, and that we should look very skeptically at people who are trying to charge us a lot of money for something that should be free. And that also we need to start thinking about what we know rather than what somebody is telling us we know. So if we go to college and we get a piece of paper, some people think that's important. It's becoming less and less important because we have the technology to figure out how much you know now. I often go to conferences and I ask people how many people have been to college, and they all put up their hands and they're all happy with themselves. And then I ask them, how many of you would like to be tested on that course that you did right now? And they all put down their hands. They're saying, no, please. I don't remember any of it. And then we just thinking, how ridiculous is that? We go around and say we have degrees, but we remember nothing of it. It's important that we can test people what they know now. And I think that puts to us that formal learning and going to universities and colleges is very limited, and it's becoming more limited every day. Employers want to know what you learned yesterday, not last year, not the thing, because things move quickly. You have to be creative, you have to be resourceful, and just the old way of doing things. And if you're faced with 4 years of college, have a think about it. Is it really worth your while? Is there other ways to educate yourself? Because, you know, how do you encourage your creative mind? How do you encourage yourself to be resourceful? These are the things that will stand to you across your life. Going to college and just signing off and saying, I spent my time there, and getting a degree that really you learned nothing, but you get a piece of paper. It's empty. And talking about the world being flat, the real challenge for anybody who's learning anything today is that more and more people around the world have access to the same education as you have. You're not special anymore. You know, in Poland, in Ireland, in America, we've grown up in situations where we've had good education systems. But actually, the whole of Africa is now studying online on Allison, on Coursera, on Udemy, all these, you know, they're catching up. So how do you differentiate yourself? Well, that is how are you different from the next guy? You have to create your own learning path. And you have to believe more in informal learning, and employers need to encourage employer in more informal learning as well. So and look, and if you have 20 minutes for free, go to the Allison platform, go down to the bottom of the homepage and take a psychometric test. Just explore. What are you good at? How many people can really say to themselves right now what they are good at? Not as many as you think. So anyway.
Okay. Michał?
I'm very glad that you developed the tools which can make the world real change now, and because of the education free to everybody, really it transforms the completely the world. because for many years and centuries, education was a privilege, and it was reserved to certain class. And now it's for everybody. And as you said, this powerful way now to transform the world.
Okay.
And I think we have to use it, and we have to connect, and we have to build this world much better.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Michał. What I'm staying with, thank you for reminding me about Thomas Friedman, because it was really good book. And when I was to US in Silicon Valley, I've heard a phrase called "What's your secret sauce?" And I think that if it's up to knowledge, the world is flat, because we have an access to as many possibilities as possible. But what is our obligacy in school? We are obligated to develop children in seeking for their secret sauce, for what they are special for. We are there to develop the society. We're there to develop things that cannot be thought in any other way. We are there to develop their thrive for knowledge, seeking for new things and curiosity. It's because if somebody is curious, he will find knowledge, even if it's digged underground.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in my opinion, in hybrid education that we're going to face starting this September, in some countries started in March. It's like education. It's like education of developing of competences that will lead us to better motivation and to looking for things out there in internet. So thank you very much for this conversation. I hope you had a good time. Sorry for keeping you longer, but you were so talkative. I was so talkative. Michał was so talkative, and everything was. It was nice talking to you. So thank you very much, and goodbye, and see you next time.
Nice talking to you. Take care.